has melded with pre-existing and ongoing practices and customs that we had found in our culture. But our culture and our societies have radically changed. So, for example, and Simple talked about this. Do we have traditions or customs around welcoming people to our shores via canoe? And have we done that for a long time? Yes. There are ways in which we understand. If somebody arrives, historically, before contact, somebody arrives in the canoe, what do we do? What do they do? There's a history of that. There's a history of that practice happening. When you enter into somebody's house, in the longhouse back in the day, there's a process, a custom, a practice that was understood and done. And that was pre-contact. And so these territorial acknowledgements, at least to what they become, is kind of this mixture of trying to respect these pre-existing traditions and trying to accomplish social justice at the same time. Like, that's really what they're about, and what they become about. So I remember when I was young, our elder, Simon Baker, used to get invited. There used to be elders a lot of time. From Musqueam, it was Walker and Vincent Stogan that did a lot back in the day. And Simon Baker was another. Lawrence Baker from Squamish. Bobby George from Tsleil-Waututh. These were it was our elders in our community that were getting asked to come. When I was doing it as a child, it was my grandmother, who still does it to this day. My 86-year-old grandmother that gets called upon to do an opening for the National Canadian Nurses Union, and does a welcoming and opening prayer. My grandmother supports her income as a pensioner by doing all of these territorial openings. She just told me today that all her money that she makes, all the honorarias that she makes from her territorial acknowledgements for the last year, she was giving to her daughter, my aunt, to get her master's degree in business administration, and taking care of her that way. So it's interesting. So here's where I start to have a problem with it, and it's kind of a little bit what Erwin talked about, is that, and a little bit of what I talked about earlier, which is that there's a diversity of opinions about this. You've seen a little bit of that tonight, or today. And we're just individuals. We're not representing anybody but ourselves. And there are larger conversations or other conversations that might happen in our own communities. There's people who you here probably will never meet, because those voices aren't the ones that come to these types of spaces. But we will meet them because that's who those are our relatives, and they engage in a different way. I had a friend who worked for a resource company in Squamish who was working on projects doing independent power projects, so building these micro dams in First Nations territory. He was getting hired by the IPP projects to help them build relationships with First Nations. And it was this funny thing because he came on a canoe journey with us. His name was Scott. He doesn't live in Vancouver anymore. He was a guy who was super helpful. Anytime we needed something, he was there to help out. We said, we need maple for paddles. 2 days later, he said, I found $400 worth of maple for paddles. We need to go pick up this, and this. He came and went and picked it up for us. He was there, helpful, and all that kind of stuff. But he was also this guy that worked in these resource companies and was trying to be this guy who was helping liaison between resource companies and First Nations. And he said this thing to me that was funny. He said, what's funny about it is if those companies, the people that those companies are told to respect and to pay attention to or to invite or to listen to are not the same people that the people in the community say. There's a difference. He said, if I came to you guys and asked you, hey, I'm trying to find somebody to come and do some, they want to do this kind of work at the site, blah, 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 who would you recommend in terms of cultural knowledge or upbringing? Who would you guys recommend? And who the people would recommend that live in the community that practice the culture that don't really operate outside of that, who would they recommend? It was not always the same people that the band offices and the band councils and the chiefs would recommend. Right? So there's different worlds. We have about 5,000 people between the two of our communities, or more, 6,000. So, territorial acknowledgements. There is a tradition of it now, the last 40 years. I grew up with it as a tradition in my community. From the age of 6, I was going with my grandmother to do openings, and it had been going on prior to that. But I think the way I see it, like I said, I think I see it as this kind of attempt to achieve social justice for Indigenous peoples, especially Coast Salish people or the people from our three communities, and trying to practice, these pre-existing cultural traditions that have been going on for thousands of years. And they're not always the same thing. Because, for example, like today, I think about like, oh, you were supposed to do this and you didn't do this. And I remember one time we were doing a blessing we were asked to come and do a blessing for this concrete bridge that was going to be crossing a highway. And I just felt like they came and asked us if we would do it, and our group that usually, we would do these types of things, just like kind of moaned this idea of like, is this really what we've become? Like, this is what our culture is now? That we're going to go sing a song and do a dance and bless this concrete slab that's going across the highway. Is that really what we want to spend our time doing or really care about? Or that's where our culture needs to be practiced. And it's so important that we call witnesses as we bless this concrete thing. And I'm just like, for me, it just feels ridiculous. But some people are into that. Some people from our communities are into that. We usually let them do it. But it's just what I mean. The people you see doing it, the people who want to be doing it, the people who don't want to be doing it, the way people want to be doing it is so different. It's so diverse. It's not going to be uniform or simple or the same. And we're still figuring it out. We're still having these conversations. One of the Advent things that's happened in the last couple of years that we started talking about what we call, I have a cousin who, she's Squamish and Salo, like Shar, and we were joking because we were at an event and I was standing there and somebody came up to the organizer and they were white and they were so angry. They were so angry because they didn't have somebody from Solo at the art gallery. They had a person from Musqueam, they had a person from Squamish, and a person from Salish. And this white person came up to the organizer and said, "You didn't have anybody from Solo. You weren't following protocol, blah, 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 blah." And me and my friend are laughing about it because my cousin is Squamish and Solo, and she's just like, "This isn't Solo territory. This is like, what are they talking about?" And she's Solo, and she says that. And so we kind of have this running joke whenever about not acknowledging Solo as a kind of inside joke. But that's the thing that's only happened in the last couple of years, where all of a sudden people think like Coast Salish means somebody like you can be Coast Salish from Victoria, but that doesn't mean that you as a Saanich or Cowichan person have the same kind of authority or authenticity to this land here. Now, that's not always clear. It's not always easy to understand what that is. It's also not easy to understand who actually has legitimate authority. There was an incident a few years ago where there was a man from my community. He didn't grow up in the community. He was a member of the Squamish Nation. He didn't grow up in the community. He had an ancestral connection to this name that he had claimed for himself, an ancestral name, which was lots of teachings and understanding about how you're supposed to do that. And so he claimed this name. And he claimed this chieftainship and said, "I'm the chief of the Squamish Nation. This is a royal, hereditary, sovereign territory, and I'm the chief above chiefs. I'm the chief of everybody. This is all my land," etc., etc., etc. And started telling people this and started acting like he had this authority to act on his behalf. And, for the most part, our people were kind of like, we usually don't get around to dealing with that unless it gets like really bad. And it got to the point where our council, our chief and council, our elected council, basically had to send out a press release because the media was listening to this guy, taking him at face value and saying, they were just saying, "Oh, you're okay," and they just break down, hereditary chief of the Squamish Nation. And so there's a lot of disinformation that was being spread out there. So there's like the mixture of both cultural protocols within our culture that weren't being followed, and then this external problem that was being created by this misinformation and this misrepresentation of authority being spread outside the community. But people were believing it, and rightly so, because people wouldn't want to be disrespectful